How did a woman end up at the bottom of the stairs dead?
There is one thing that happened on set. It was ominous. It was weird. Right before we call action, a bird swoops down just a few feet away from her head. Everyone was speechless. They didn't know what the fuck just happened. Some people thought it was a hawk. Some people thought it was an owl. What we learned later was that on the property that we were shooting on, there lived a barred owl. A barred owl is the same exact owl that they believed attacked Kathleen that night. When I wrote the pilot, I knew that part of that would be exploring the different theories and reenacting or depicting them. The ones I felt like the ones that needed to be explored were the fall, the murder, and the owl.
Before we started, Antonio emailed me just a couple of home videos, just a couple of glimpses, and even those tiny moments were very helpful. And there was just this moment of her with her little coffee cup sitting on Michael's lap, and the energy between them, it just said something very powerful to me. In a way, I had an easy job. I had more freedom than any of the other actors because Kathleen is not here.
The house is filled with so many memories. La Familia.
A team of people went to 1810 Cedar. It was for sale at the time during our pre-production. And so we were able to get in and measure it. The goal was to then recreate it exactly as our show touches upon. It was impossible to do that. So even just with the numbers, we weren't even quite able to do that. We had 4 staircases. We had our green staircase, which was the one we used for stunts. We had 2 staircases for the house that we built on the soundstage. One was the clean staircase and one was the staircase that has the blood spatter evidence on it. And then our 4th staircase was the one that the State Bureau of Investigation built to use during their Michael Peterson experiments.
The thing with those steps is that they were built before code. So no one would build steps like that now. They're very narrow, and it's also a dark hallway. You get a sense that if you're going up this too quickly, or if you're potentially inebriated and you're running up the steps and it's dark, like it is, it's not hard to believe someone would trip.
I think it was so smart and brave of Antonio to just keep the camera back and just let it move on its own and not go in and cover the shit out of it. It just happened very organically. We rehearsed it and we all went, yeah, that feels pretty good. And then we started shooting it.
We talked a lot about it. We knew it couldn't be sensational. We knew that we wanted to feel really real. We wanted the camera to kind of be at a distance. What we were trying to do was allow the thing to unfold. And, where we landed is imagine if you were a fly on the wall the night of her death. Imagine if there were surveillance cameras there, what would they see? They wouldn't have the ability to move or reframe. We might be able to go from camera 1 to camera 2, but we couldn't get close to the action.
911, where's your emergency?
My wife, she had an accident.
What kind of accident?
She fell down the stairs.
Is she conscious?
No, she's not breathing.
We felt a lot of pressure. I remember when we were when something wasn't right, we'd be like, it's called the staircase. We just need to get this right.
Duplicating the staircase was very important. And then everything else from there kind of felt less important because that kind of is the epicenter. So as the epicenter, it was an enormous amount of pressure to get them right and to make sure that everyone was safe while we were doing it, emotionally and physically. The evidence that we had were photographs of the staircase that were taken by the police. And then we had a written description of what's on each staircase, making sure that the blood that's there that we show is actually the blood that was there. But how did it get there, which is up for debate. And part of the reason that there's 3 depictions is to show that there are multiple ways to achieve the same result. And so for us, it was just getting into the staircase and kind of getting that as accurate as possible. So it would support this thesis that even when that is accurate, we can have these 3 depictions that show, vastly different, scenes within them. And you still feel like the end result is the thing that you saw.
During the shoots, we changed our minds every second day. And that's part of the retelling of it. That's part of why it's so compelling. we'll never actually have an answer.
I'd like to make a toast to so many better days ahead. Every day is going to be an adventure. So always stop and think, this is one of the happiest days of my life.
To the Petersons. To us.
Toni Collette is like, she's fearless. There wasn't any convincing on our end to get her to do it. I think for her, she felt a great amount of responsibility to trying to convey something that felt real. The fact that this is inspired by a real death, reenacting this actual trauma or murder that this woman might have gone through, it weighed on her. She wasn't scared of it, but she felt a great amount of responsibility in going into these scenes, and you could tell.
The documentary, doesn't really see her as much more than a victim, and she's quite objectified. So it was a bit of a responsibility to kind of create her from not very much.
Once she got into that little box of the staircase on the green steps, she didn't leave that space until she had to get sort of rigged with the blood. It was 2 phases. What we figured out, the first thing that has to happen is the stunt person has to go in and do the stunt. Once we got a take of the stunt that we liked, then Toni Collette would go to basically the moment after the stunt person has landed, and with the monitor, we overlay the 2 images, the image of the stunt woman in her last frame, and then Toni Collette live. I try and get her body in exactly, or as close to exactly the same spot.
Sounds like move your leg 1 inch to the right.
Yeah,
nope.
Exactly.
Back, half it. Oh, it's like, it's that precise.
We would do it maybe 4 or 5 times like that. And then she would go get rigged.
Once Michael leaves and, blood is pouring out of her, and, there were these tubes that I was connected to kind of a bank of blood that was being pumped up and through a wig. And I really only had 1 chance to do each of those takes. 1 chance. And that's a lot of pressure.
Ultimately, that was it, because what we realized in post was actually doing the blood, cutting a blood take and a non-blood take was incredibly time consuming and almost impossible. We ultimately had to live with the 1 take, the blood take. And the blood take was the most traumatic.
It's a lot. It's a lot to have to do that 3 times. The reality of it is worse. So just, I just hope I did her justice.
What's going on? What are the police looking for?
We believe Michael Peterson murdered Kathleen in cold blood.
And the second depiction is so much different than the first. Not just an additional bit of choreography, it was also this character beat, because Michael needs to get to a point where he's mad enough, motivated to turn around and push her down the steps.
We talked about this a lot. Him making that decision, it's not, you have to get the character to make that decision. And if you can't do that on the page, it's going to be increasingly difficult for the actor to do it as well. So we decided to use I'm trying to get away from an argument, and then, I lose my temper.
You are nothing. Do you hear me, Michael?
It's one of my favorite scenes, I think. I think it's so brilliantly written. It captures something so very real about the pain of a moment of exposure within a relationship. And you can feel all that could happen from that moment. It's just devastating.
Antonio and I went to the staircase and kind of figured out what the fight sequence would look like.
So much of why that fight, I think, works and is believable is because of all the work we did beforehand.
And that was definitely a group effort in the writer's room, which was one of those helpful things, to have such a group of people with a variety of opinions kind of work to create this scenario.
I had a sense that people were going to be kind of excited about the owl theory. I didn't expect the level of enthusiasm around the owl theory. It was surprising that everybody, that people have this, people really want to believe it. People really want to believe that something like that could happen.
It's this theory that represents all of the theories of all of the things that could have possibly have happened that we can't put our finger on. There's no way to ever fully know a person. There's no way to ever fully know an event or a relationship or a family. And that's kind of what the owl theory embraces, that it could just be something just totally that no one's thought of. This case is really popular because there are so many roads to go down, and this is one of them. And this is the road that says maybe there's a road that we haven't seen or thought of yet.
By that point in the series, we're up to episode 6. We've seen the depiction twice. We felt it was more merciful for Kathleen and for the audience to not sit there and watch it continue. We've seen the scene before. We know what's going to happen. Let's just get out of it. It's that Hail Mary moment. The fact that she engages it is because she's reached a point of desperation. There's nothing else. It's like, what are you going to do when there's nothing else? We'll follow the owl theory. There is one thing that happened on set. We were rehearsing outside. We were at the practical location of the house. And right before we call action, she's standing on the driveway. Right before we call action, a bird swoops down just a few feet away from her head and then flies up and like does a spin and goes flying somewhere else. Everyone was speechless. They didn't know what the fuck just happened. And some people thought it was a hawk and some people thought it was an owl. What we learned later was that on the property that we were shooting on, there lived a barred owl. A barred owl is the same exact owl that they believed attacked Kathleen that night. I don't know if it means anything, but it is very strange that happened.